First of all, I just wanted to say hello and welcome. I'm really excited that you guys took some time out to share with us tonight. This is our first speaker series for CLC, which is exciting. I'm Andrea Lutz, and I'm the Director of Advancement for the Conservation Law Center. And I just want to go over some quick Zoom rules. So please do keep yourself muted unless you're asking a question. We're asking that people hold their questions until the end of the event. Denise and Alexis are both going to give a little chat, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. When you are going to ask a question, please use the raise hand function, and you can go down to the lower right-hand corner of your Zoom app, and right there under reactions, you'll find raise hand. You can click that, and we'll be able to see that you have a question. And I did want to let everyone know we are recording this tonight, just a little heads up. So just for those people that just swung in, please keep yourself muted and use the raise hand function for questions at the end of the session. And just to get this all kicked off, I want to introduce Christian Freitag. Christian is the Conservation Law Center Executive Director and our fearless leader. He has over 22 years of experience in the conservation field in his professional career. And on top of being the president and executive director here at CLC, he's also a clinical associate professor at the IU Maurer School of Law and instructs our conservation law clinic. So go ahead and take it away there, Christian.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And that all makes me sound much more formal than I actually am going to be or than I am in real life. So we'll just roll with that. I know many of you because I have worked with some of you. I know Bree and Zoe I see, and Olivia's here, and I look forward to. I hope I have a chance to meet the rest of you. I've met Denise before a long time ago, and I've heard tell about Alexis. So I'm really glad to have these smart people come and tell you how they got there. I think it's a cool subject, honestly. I sometimes wonder at my own good fortune for ending up here. And then I realize it's not luck that allowed me to get to the position I'm in. It's decisions that I made along the way. And by hearing from people like Denise and Alexis, I think it'll be, hopefully it's helpful. And we are sensitive to the fact that it's finals time, so we're not going to take up too much of your time. And I'm sure you're all stressed out, but it's showing up to stuff like this that are the little decisions that help you find your way. So I'm going to introduce the two people that you're going to be hearing from mostly, and then I'm going to let them take it away. Alexis Andiman, we'll start with her. The people that we'll talk to tonight are Alexis Andiman and Denise Walker. Alexis was a grad of Lewis and Clark Law School with a focus, I think, a certificate in environmental law. And she was a grad fellow, I think, Alexis, right a few years before I got here, 2014 to 2016, I think is when you were here. And you've been at Earthjustice now for, I think, 6 years, 5 or 6 years at least. And she's going to be telling us about that path. And Denise Walker, and we'll start with Alexis, but Denise, she has an MPA from SPIA, or what we're supposed to call the O'Neill School nowadays. It's still SPIA, yeah. We're all SPIONs, those of us who have them. She's got a JD from Maurer, and I think you were CLC's first grad fellow, from what I understand. And that was before we even had it as a separate program. I think you were still a student when you were the grad fellow.
Yes.
Yeah, way back in the day.
That's right.
She had a chance to work with the Indiana Department of Ag, and then the federal agencies, NOIA, and now she's at the EPA. So it's a pretty interesting path on her own right. So Alexis, I'll hand it off to you, and maybe tell everybody why you're so cool.
Okay, thank you all. I have some slides that I can share with you in case you're not familiar with Earthjustice. To give you a little bit of background and to tell you a little bit about the work that I do. And first, I'd just like to begin by thanking you all. It's such a pleasure to have the opportunity to chat with you about Earthjustice and my work. And I'm so excited to hear your questions and what you all are thinking in terms of environmental advocacy. I think I should get through this presentation in under 10 minutes, so it won't take a lot of time, but hopefully it's helpful to have a little bit of background. So Earthjustice is the United States' premier nonprofit environmental law organization. That's what we say on the website. We wield the power of law and the strength of partnership to protect people's health, to preserve magnificent places and wildlife, to advance clean energy, and to combat climate change. Ultimately, we exist because the earth needs a good lawyer. Earthjustice was founded in 1971, so 50 years ago, as the Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund. Back then, we were a small group of lawyers operating on a shoestring budget, working to protect Mineral King, which is a California valley that is now part of Sequoia National Park. At the time, Walt Disney wanted to turn Mineral King into a ski resort. We managed to protect it. And in doing that, we established the important legal principle that allows people to fight to protect the environment in court. Today, Earthjustice is the legal backbone of the environmental movement. We file more cases than any other public interest environmental law firm. And when we go to court, we get results. We fought to protect irreplaceable wild places and wildlife. We fought to ensure that everyone, no matter where they live, has the ability to breathe clean air and drink clean water. We fought to transition off fossil fuels that threaten the future of our planet. And we've done all that work in partnership with our clients and supporters. We now have over 150 full-time attorneys, and we're growing all the time, along with a team of dedicated scientists, communication experts, fundraisers, policy professionals, and all sorts of other folks who help keep everything running. And one thing to note, unlike other environmental nonprofits, some other environmental nonprofits, Earthjustice always represents and works in partnership with client organizations, whether those are large environmental groups like Sierra Club, with millions of members, or small grassroots organizations. All of our clients are fighting to help make the planet a healthier place, and every one of them gets top-tier legal representation for free. Because we never charge our clients any money, we're able to choose our cases based on the strength of the legal theory, the importance of the work, the value of the view that our clients are presenting, and not based on anyone's ability to pay. And because we always partner with clients, we always have the ability to benefit from their expertise. So Earthjustice has 14 offices across the country. Those offices typically focus on local issues and develop regional expertise. We also have a number of national programs, including our Sustainable Food and Farming program, a program focused on oceans protection, a program focused on clean energy, some folks who specialize in toxic exposure and health, and a variety of other things. I work in our Sustainable Food and Farming program, which focuses on a really broad range of issues. We define sustainable food and farming as beginning with seed selection and moving through to methods of plant and animal production and harvesting, and extending all the way to food accessibility and nutrition insecurity. And so with that very brief background, I'll chat about a couple of the cases I've been working on recently, just so you all have a sense of what I do. A quick heads up that the next slide has pictures of animal carcasses, if that's something that anyone is sensitive to. I think it's not terribly gruesome, but that's what it is. So since late 2019, I've been working on a lawsuit seeking updated water pollution standards for slaughterhouses. More than 8 billion chickens, 100 million pigs, and 30 million cattle are processed each year in more than 7,000 slaughterhouses across the country. An estimated 4,700 of those slaughterhouses discharge polluted wastewater either directly to rivers and streams or indirectly to rivers and streams through publicly owned municipal sewage treatment plants, essentially. The Federal Clean Water Act requires the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, to set industry-wide water pollution control standards for slaughterhouses and other industries. And the Clean Water Act was designed to ensure that those standards keep pace with technological improvements over time. So EPA is required to revisit technological standards every year just to take a look at them and decide whether they need to be updated to keep pace with technological improvements. That's a huge job, and EPA is pretty seriously behind. So EPA has not revised standards for any slaughterhouses since 2004. Many slaughterhouses are still subject to water pollution standards that date to the mid-1970s, and I'm sure it will not come as a surprise to any of you that technology has advanced quite a bit since then. And EPA has never developed pre-treatment standards for the majority of slaughterhouses which discharge their pollution indirectly to rivers and streams. As a result of that, slaughterhouses can really overwhelm publicly owned treatment works with very polluted wastewater. The treatment works then can't handle it, and they end up discharging pollution and often violating their own permits. So that was the situation in October 2019 when the Trump EPA decided that, once again, it was not going to revise water pollution standards for slaughterhouses, and it was not going to publish pretreatment standards for indirect discharging slaughterhouses. We sued EPA at that point on behalf of a pretty broad coalition, including environmental groups, animal rights organizations, community groups representing folks who live near slaughterhouses who have to deal with this polluted wastewater. And we, in September of this year, EPA changed its mind and decided that it would revise those standards. So it's not a victory that we won in court, but we think that our litigation probably prompted that change, which is great news. Because among other things, EPA pointed out in its September decision that about 74% of direct discharging slaughterhouses are located within 1 mile of a community of concern. So essentially an under-resourced community, a low-income community, or a community of color. So that's one project. And then shifting gears pretty broadly, I wanted to mention some work we've done to protect New York City's community gardens, which I'm really excited about because so much of our litigation and advocacy focuses on unsafe, unsustainable methods of production. And we really have relatively few opportunities to champion traditional, sustainable, healthy, good practices, the things we want to see more of. But this petition is an example of that. Community gardens, as I'm sure you all know, are green spaces designed and maintained by community members. And because of that, community gardens are responsive to the needs of their communities. So across New York City, I'm sure the same is true in Indiana, you really see community gardens take on the character of their neighborhoods. In areas with really high immigrant populations, community gardens tend to be a great place to grow culturally appropriate fruits and vegetables and herbs and spices that you might struggle to find at supermarkets. In some neighborhoods that really value composting, community gardens also operate as community composting sites. And there are a host of other examples. Community gardens will offer a range of public programs depending on, whether there is a need for kids' activities or a need for places to do yoga, all sorts of things. They're really special places in the city. But unfortunately, community gardens have almost no legal protections in New York. Many of them are based on city-owned land, which is great because it's affordable. They're just able to use the city space, but it means that they really have no security. The land could be sold out from under them at any time, and nearby development can reduce their value as gardens. So for example, if a huge housing development is built right down the street from a garden, it could block the sunlight, of course, it could alter drainage, it could do any number of things that interfere with the garden's ability to grow plants. So we've asked New York City agencies with jurisdiction over community gardens, there are about 500 across the city, to protect them under New York's environmental review statute, essentially New York's little NEPA, little National Environmental Protection Act, to designate them as critical environmental areas, which basically would give an extra stage of procedural review before the city was able to approve any development that could harm a community garden. And what we've heard from gardeners is that would be really important When gardens have been damaged by development in the past, often the gardeners who've invested decades in building up these special places have no advance notice. They don't know what's going on. They don't have an opportunity to submit comments or share their thoughts with decision makers at a hearing. So this petition, if granted, could be a big change. We've faced a lot of opposition from the city so far. The major concern is that there's a perceived conflict between affordable housing and community gardens in New York City. And of course, affordable housing and community gardens are both important. Ideally, affordable housing would be set up in livable neighborhoods, not just absolutely cram-packed neighborhoods with no green space. And it's a little bit disappointing to see decision makers raise affordable housing as a concern when they don't actually have any concrete plans to build affordable housing anywhere. It would be great if they did, but we are waiting to hear. We submitted our petition about a year ago, and we're investigating some strategies to try to prompt some action in the near future. So that's an example of some non-litigation advocacy that we're working on, and I will stop there. Over to you, Denise, I think.
That is very cool. I appreciate that. I appreciate that presentation, that discussion. We'll have a chance to ask questions of Alexis here in a minute. Let's go ahead and move on to Denise, who's coming to us from the Great White North.
That's right.
We'll let her take the mic.
Well, thank you, Christian, and thank you for that presentation, Alexis. This is so much fun. I'm glad to be here with you all. So just so I understand who I'm talking to here, are we all mostly senior, or I mean, seniors, haha, 3Ls or 2Ls, or where are we here? Senior or seniors? I just talked to a bunch of high school students, I'm sorry. 3Ls? Yeah? 2? Oh, you've got your numbers up? I think I'm at 15L or something, so. Okay, good, we've got a mix. So I've been practicing now as an attorney for 16 years. That seems really crazy. But graduated in 2006 with my JD MPA. And as Christian mentioned, I was the first CLC clinic fellow, which was super fun back with Bill Weeks. And Christian, you were actually one of my very first clients at the CLC at the Sycamore Land Trust. So this is great. So first, since you're all going to be trying to get a job, get a career, that's what my talk is going to focus on. How do you do that? How did I do it? What's my advice for you, right? So a couple of things to think about. Do what you're doing right now, which is find people who are doing what you want to do and talk to them, right? Do a lot of that. Do that as much as you possibly can. Trust yourself. You know in your heart of hearts what it is that you need to be doing, and you know when you're off path, okay? Trust yourself and just have confidence in yourself. You're brilliant. You're able to do this. You're able to do anything in your career that you can imagine, okay? So with that, I actually also clerked at Earthjustice many moons ago in 2005, Alexis, and it was a great experience. I thought working for Earthjustice would just be the best thing in the world to try to do. But as a law student, I was trying to basically put together a resume and a portfolio that would keep me on mission. And my mission was to be an environmental advocate. And I wasn't really sure how that was gonna go, right? But I would take opportunities that were in line with that mission, okay? So I wasn't gonna take a job or an internship doing something that was off mission, like family law or, doing trusts or something like that, okay? So, and I'm a big proponent too of sort of guerrilla career moves as well. So one of my first guerrilla career moves was I went up to the Office of Environmental Adjudication in Indianapolis to a brown bag that the judges were giving. I skipped class and I went to this brown bag. And after the brown bag, I handed my resume to the environmental law judges there. And I said, my name is Denise Walker, and I would love to work for you this summer. Here's my resume. They did not have clerks. right? But because I was so interested in what they were doing, they made a position for me, right? A half-time position. And so there I had something really great on my resume. I was working for environmental law judges, okay? The next summer, I was like, man, it would just be a dream to work for Earthjustice, right? Wouldn't it? It's so much fun. They're such a great organization. And so I applied thinking, yeah, I'm sure every other law, student who has any kind of environmental leaning ever is applying for these jobs, right? Probably. But, I applied and they actually sent me a timed written test, write this legal research memo in this amount of time and send it back to us. It was kind of intense, but I was prepared. I was a Maurer student and I was ready to go. I did it there in a carrel in the library, sent it back, and they interviewed me and I got the job. I went out to California that summer, 2005. The same summer I was a CLC fellow, actually. So I was then doing the CLC fellow. I had Earthjustice on my resume, and I was thinking, this is great. So then I graduated, right? And how stressful is this? You're taking the bar exam, you're preparing for this, you don't have a job, all your friends have already got their law firm clerkships, and they're like, we're set up, and they're not stressed. And here you're trying to prepare for the bar and you're trying to get a job at the same time. Well, I applied at a lot of places and had a lot of rejection letters. Okay, so let me just tell you, I will challenge anybody with the amount of rejection letters that I have. That is fine. You just keep going, okay? Because you're going to find the right position. All right, which I did. I ended up with a position, my first job out of law school, at the Indiana Attorney General's office. Actually, not the Ag Department, Christian, the Attorney General's office. And at that time, they were kind of like the DOJ for IDEM, right? I don't think they're structured that way now, but it's basically we were the law firm for the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, okay? So I found myself completely unprepared to be an environmental litigator right out of law school. I hadn't taken trial ad. I did not know what I was doing because I did the MPA. So I didn't have time in my schedule for all of that trial ad. Plus I thought I was going to be a writing lawyer, not a, litigator. Wrong. So, but it was on mission and I was super excited about it. So I took it. I took the job and I did it. And it was a great experience. Okay. Working for the state is a super great experience. They give you a ton of responsibility right off the bat. I mean, the ink on my bar card was barely dry before they said, go down and get this preliminary injunction against this guy. And I was like, I have never done direct examination before. Okay. But you can learn. You all will have the skills graduating from Maurer and working with the CLC and, rely on each other. I called one of my friends who had taken trial ad and I was like, help, can you give me a crash course before I have this hearing? And he did, right? And I won, by the way, also. And so then, yeah, right? So I actually found litigating at the state level pretty fun, even though it was kind of intense. And I had cases all over the place. Confined feeding operation cases, hog ponds that were overflowing, mom and pop tire burners, big corporations, U.S. Steel, Carmoose Line, big polluters, little polluters, all across the map. Every kind of media, which means, air, water, land, hazardous waste, you name it. I found myself out in boots, hiking around leaking landfills. I even was, at one point, on the back of a tailgate of a pickup truck with a judge touring a hog farm. I mean, it was a riot. Highly recommend, right? Does not pay worth a darn at all. So just know that sometimes when you're on the mission and you're on the path, so you just got to have faith. I mean, I woke up every day in more debt than I had been the day before because of my student loans, all right? And I was just like, how is this going to work, right? And then in 2010, after I'd been a litigator for 4 years, and by that time I was pretty sassy. I did not want to brief things. I did not want to mess around with discovery. I was just like, do you have a witness? Because I do. Let's go to court, right? But then the BP oil spill happened, and I can remember sitting at my desk just dismayed watching this big blob of oil spread across Noah's map. You guys remember that maybe? And I was mad. And I was like, man, I would love to sue those people. How could I do that? I wonder if they're hiring. Right? And just, so I went on USA Jobs, and sure enough, Noah was hiring extra attorneys to work on that case, and I thought they might be. And I applied again. I felt like this was a 3-point jump shot from outside the arena to get this job, right? I was like, surely everybody who has any interest in any environmental case is going to want to work on this. And I wasn't wrong. Over 500 people applied for those jobs, but I was one of them that got hired, right? And I think that they could tell that I was passionate about wanting to work on this case and do this work. So I moved from Indianapolis to DC in 2010 and started working on that case. And it was hard, okay? It was like a big learning curve. I was from Kansas. I didn't know anything about oceans. I didn't know anything about oil spills other than leaking underground storage tanks from Indiana. But I was willing to learn. And I was also willing to do a lot of grunt work, right? Which is what they needed. They needed young attorneys to do some grunt work on that case. A lot of document review, a lot of like, you know, travel. I traveled to the Gulf every month. A lot of sitting on conference calls, you know, listening to scientists and understanding how the case was being put together. A lot of late nights, right? And it was an amazing experience, right? Again, like on mission. And now I was working on like one of the biggest cases that we'd ever seen. So then that case came to a close in 2014. And it had always been a dream of mine to work as an attorney at the EPA. And I'm just checking out over my time here. Okay, getting close, pretty much done. So I applied to work in the Office of General Counsel at the EPA for a job that I didn't actually really, I was super qualified for this job, but I was like, well, maybe I can move around once I get in the door, which is a good philosophy. But what I didn't know was that they were looking to hire someone with basically my exact skill set to start a brand new office at EPA. And so when I applied, they actually picked me off of their list to interview for a job that hadn't been posted at all, right? And that job was to start the FOIA expert assistance team with the agency, which basically what we do, I now run an office with a small team of lawyers and government information specialists, and we handle the largest, most complex, likely to be litigated, likely to have congressional oversight, likely to have media involvement type matters that come into the agency, like Flint, like VW, like ethylene oxide, like Gold King Mine, all of these things that you read about in the paper or online as it is these days. Likely my team has been working on it to get the information to the press and to the academics that are, you know, involved. In fact, Flint was one of my first big matters that I worked on at EPA. So I make sure that those things are handled properly, that the public gets the information timely, and that everything is really legally defensible, because the last thing EPA needs is a lot of litigation on top of these high profile matters about our document productions. And what we do need is we need to have a lot of transparency about what's going on in those things, so that, well, obviously because it's a good idea, but also because it's better for the agency and it's better for the American people. So it's a lot of fun. And the thing that I really like about it is I kind of am all over the agency working on different things and meeting with lots of different people. So I think my career path has been pretty amazing, quite frankly. And I have a lot of fun doing it. So, and I'm not even done, you know? So I think it's just great. You're all gonna be doing great things with your career. And you should know that there's a lot of alumni out here that are happy to help you too. So with that, I'll stop.
Thank you very much. That is, I love hearing that. One of the things I like about your story, Denise, I feel like I'm going to resist all my urges to talk about my own experience. But one of the things that really hits home to me is that you made your jobs. Like you went out and like you chased them. Like you went out and if they didn't exist, you created them. If and you knocked on the right doors and you showed up and you like sort of social entrepreneurialism is a cool thing, and I really appreciate that because in my experience, these jobs are hard to come by, especially in the Midwest, and going out and beating down doors is usually the right way. So good on you. We have some questions, but I don't think that will be the most interesting part of it about this. So I'm going to open this up to anybody that wants to chime in. Anybody have any questions for the group?
Yeah, ask away. You can ask about my career or other things, you know, what TV shows you watching right now, Denise?
Let's I'll maybe prime the pump here and ask about a question that I always had when I was going through this process of finding my way in the legal field, was whether or not I wanted to be a litigator. And you know, there's different ways to be an environmental proponent or advocate, to do good work in the environment. And I think that environmental lawyers sometimes, well, I think when people think of environmental lawyers, they sometimes think about litigators, but that's not the only way that that happens. So how'd you, I mean, when you guys were faced with those choices, how'd you deal with that? Or like, what, how'd you end up, it seems like you both gravitated that direction, or maybe not, but tell us about that if you would.
Go ahead, Alexis.
Okay. I went to law school wanting to litigate. I went to law school feeling like I really wanted to force some kind of action and change things. And it felt to me at the time that litigation was the way to do that. I think now my practice is probably 60% litigation, 40% advocacy outside of the litigation context. I really enjoy litigation. I think I'm kind of a combative person, so it's a good fit for me. I like to have a fight, and I can convince myself I'm right pretty easily, which is not a great personal quality, but works well in that job. I do probably more administrative advocacy than I anticipated doing when I was at law school. I think in school, I thought that sounded pretty boring. I wasn't super stoked on policy. As I've gotten more experience and worked more, especially in food and farming, I've realized that it's really necessary. You know, it's just a fact that bedrock environmental laws don't touch agriculture in the way we hope they would. So it's not always as easy to go to court and file a case. You do need to try to think about how to change laws so they'll work the way you want them to, and try to convince agencies to take some of your great ideas and do what you want them to do. And ultimately, I think it's been a lot more rewarding than I gave it credit for. I think agency staff so often want to work with you and are looking for cover to do things that are good and protective. So I've enjoyed that portion, but I have found that it's a lot easier to move from more litigation to less litigation than I imagine it would be to go in the opposite direction. So I think I lucked out a little bit in focusing on litigation earlier on, knowing that that's something that I wanted to do, and then maybe stepping back a little bit. I don't know how that went for you, Denise.
Well, I kind of alluded to it. I did not think I was going to be a litigator, and then I found myself as a litigator, and I also enjoyed it. And I don't really do any litigating now. Now I'm a manager, and I run a team of attorneys and government information specialists. But I really enjoy that too. I really enjoy the leadership aspect of it. I've enjoyed building something entirely new in the EPA Office of General Counsel. I mean, who gets to do that? That's pretty cool. So I've been busy transforming, EPA policy by basically using my team as an incubator and taking the best ideas from what we do on these high-profile cases, and then, pushing those out sort of from the ground up across the rest of the agency. And that shows up in our policy and procedures, and as we're doing like working on regulations and redrafting to say, hey, let's incorporate this good idea that we had over here. And for me, that's really fun. I really enjoy leadership. I enjoy building teams and problem solving, really at bottom. And a colleague of mine said, you just really enjoy restoring order to chaos, however you can get that done. So if you can get it done through litigation, or you can get it done through leadership and policy, there's a lot of ways to be a lawyer, and a lot of ways to be a really effective lawyer. And I've had the great joy to experience a lot of different ways to be a lawyer.
Great. Trip, I think your hand went up. No.
I think we have a question here.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm actually not a law student. I'm a biology student at IU, like a fourth year master student. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I saw from the LinkedIn, and I was gonna like just for career exploration, but I want to get some advice. Like, because I wanted to do career change, because I'm currently working on plant microbe interaction, and I'm interested in sustainable agriculture. I wanted to go to law school and I wanted to build some experience before, but I will work as a full-time researcher or technician in the biotech industry, but because a lot of things are that without any experience, most of them are unpaid. So I was gonna ask, like, which type of jobs or experience that you recommend for the first step?
I can start there. When I went to the judges and said, I would like to work for you, they couldn't pay me. And so we negotiated that I would work half-time for them, and I would work half-time for my job that paid. Because I could not afford to just, not get paid. I had bills to pay, and, school to pay for, and rent and things, So I think, being able to be flexible and creative, and just really, really like let people know where you're at. I really want to work for you. Here's my circumstance. Like, I'm looking for ways to make this work. Do you have ideas? Right. Mm-hmm. And, that will help you get where you want to go. When I was working for Earthjustice, I was concurrently working for CLC so that I could get the fellowship money. Right. Because Earthjustice, while they paid me a little bit, they didn't pay me enough to live in San Francisco. Right. And so I was doing both jobs. I would do the Earthjustice job during the day, and then in the evening I would work on the CLC. So, you kind of have to do what you can to make it work. But I hear you. I actually also have a science degree, and then moved into legal advocacy. So, go for it.
Thank you. So you worked as a I saw your LinkedIn profile, and you worked in the lab, right?
I did soil ecology research. That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was doing some of the original work on carbon sequestration in grassland and juniper forests.
Mm-hmm. Was that background helpful when you are in the law school, or how was it a little bit connected?
I found it very helpful because when I talk to my clients, the agency folks and the state scientists, I'm able to connect with them and understand what they're talking about, right? And I've done some field work. I've been out getting bitten by ticks and chiggers in the grass, doing the actual work to get the data. And I think it's been helpful to me to have that background and just be able to understand more what my science teams are doing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew, what do you think?
There we go. All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time this evening. Also a science background guy, but that's not really relevant. My question is more about like the idea of a career in policy. I came over thinking like, okay, I want to work in maybe policy surrounding the marine environment. And so it's like you have this idea, like I want to go to law school and I want to work in policy and I want to make these substantive changes that will benefit. But it's like, how does that actually, are people interested in hearing or like hiring and then you're working in areas that influence policy directly out of the gate? Or is it more one of those things where you should kind of think about, okay, what are the stepping stones going to be? And I guess kind of going along with that, then like, how do you demonstrate your desire and passion to do those things through a resume? Is there anything that you would maybe recommend just putting on there that's not typical, or maybe something that you think would just be a good idea? So I'll leave that up for either of you.
Well, I have thoughts, but I'll let Alexis take a stab at it unless you don't have thoughts.
Geez, I don't know. Let's see. I think I do have thoughts. I hope they're helpful. I think it depends on the job. I think generally I have found, and I think the more junior folks I work with now are able to contribute pretty meaningfully right out of the gate. And I'd certainly say that I think the people I work with appreciate that. I don't think there's any expectation that new employees or more junior attorneys will sort of keep their blinders on and do what they're told and not ever brainstorm or try to contribute anything beyond fulfilling assignments. So there is a balance maybe between making sure that you're actually able to do the work that's given to you while you're also coming up with brilliant new directions and ideas. But I wouldn't hold back on making suggestions. See, that's the part that stood out to me about your question. I think there's room to do both. As far as resume building, I think Denise had a really great narrative of trying to find the element in each job you do that appeals to you. And I think that works whether you have a really clear vision in mind about what you think you want to do, which it seems like you do, or whether you don't. I think when I went to law school, I didn't know that I wanted to be doing sustainable food and farming work. And I'm not sure that I'll want to do that forever, but I think there are elements of every job I've had and elements of the job I have now that I find really interesting and rewarding. And certainly there are ways that each job that I've had builds upon the next and relevant experiences stand out. So I think that's something you could take to compiling your resume, make sure that you are tweaking it a little bit as you apply to new jobs and you're making sure that, the bullets you pull out of experiences you've had respond to the job posting. I think there are probably elements of something you've done in every position that will be transferable to a new position you're looking at, even if it's a different subject matter or something like that. So there's that kind of tweaking. I'm not sure if that's too granular a piece of advice, but I think that kind of personalizing a resume pays off.
So you had a bunch of pieces in your question, so I'll try to remember what they were. And if I miss some, just let me know. So how do you get into this policy work? Right, and good question. So, and if you're into like marine protection, kind of like I said before, try to find the people that are doing what you want to do, right? Snoop around on the NOAA website, like read these cases of these attorneys that are taking these cases. Where are they? Are they at NOAA? Are they at ENRD in the Department of Justice? Are they at Mission Blue with Sylvia Earle and like the Ocean and Marine Conservation organizations? Are they at Earthjustice? Find them and reach out to them. You'd be surprised like how many of these people will respond to you and do coffee or just take 10, 15, 20 minutes and talk to you about your career. And then as far as resume building, demonstrate on your resume that you're interested in that, through volunteer work, or maybe you want to write a law review article or a note for your journal that's related to what you want to do. Maybe you want to volunteer for some kind of like mock trial thing. I don't know, whatever you can do that demonstrates to people that you're interested in this work and you're doing it, you're trying to do it, right? And then I would say, there's lots of opportunities for young attorneys to, when you get in, to have your ideas heard. In the government, where I've been my whole career for the most part, we certainly value young people and new ideas. The government has an aging workforce, and so we're all cognizant of the fact that we need to bring on new people and make sure that we don't lose our institutional knowledge, while also building a new cadre of attorneys and policy wonks to really carry the mission of these agencies forward. I love developing new attorneys. It's fun for me to do, and I like to give them assignments that are stretch assignments, or I encourage them to fail. I'm like, I really want you to be innovative. I want you to be trying new things. If you're not failing, you're not learning. And creating safe places for them to really grow and explore and come up with crazy ideas that end up being like, oh yeah, why weren't we doing that? That's really valuable, and something I certainly encourage in my younger attorneys.
I'll tack onto that just very briefly. I'll tack onto that to say, Matthew, there are policy jobs out there. If you want to go chase that path exists. That exists on a big scale and a small scale. Earthjustice has a bunch of policy people. How one goes about down that path is something that I'm not the expert at that. But if you look at the big outfits out there, like Earthjustice or NRDC or World Wildlife Fund or National Wildlife Federation, those all have policy lawyers. People who work on the policy side of things. And then if you look at smaller outfits, like medium size, but regional, like environmental law firms like Southern Environmental Law Center or Environmental Law and Policy Center out of Chicago, they have policy people. That's what they do. They are not litigators. They are working on the legislative side of things. They are working on the policy side of things. And then, I would encourage you all to think broadly about where these jobs live. They don't just live in the big outfits. They don't just live in nonprofits, foundations, family foundations. There are thousands of family foundations around the country. Some of them are quite big, like the Heinz endowments in Pittsburgh or the Ford Foundation in Detroit. Those people they hire lawyers to do environmental stuff, whether it's not litigation, obviously it's not litigation, but if you're looking to just find your way into good entry-level jobs, think broadly about where those jobs live. They're not just in nonprofits, but the ones that are in nonprofits often do have a policy branch to them.
Don't forget about the government. We certainly have a lot of policy people.
Fair enough. There you go.
I know quite a few people at NOAA.
Zoe, what do you have to share with us today?
I think you answered my question just now a little bit, but I was going to build off of Matt and sort of ask about the type of variety you could expect maybe within different types of environmental jobs, because I've had environmental, as everyone here demonstrates, there's a lot of ways to be an environmental lawyer. And I think oftentimes I've had environmental law described to me as, if you want to be an environmental advocate, there's 3 ways to do that. And it's government, sort of plaintiff-centered litigation, or transactional law. And I was just curious about the type of, I think that those 3 categories sort of limit the field a little bit. And I was curious about the type of variety you could experience within just one type of position. And I also wanted to say hello to Denise, because I did my 1L informational interview with you, and it's nice to see you again.
Yes, hello. And how did that go for you?
It went well. It went very well.
Well, I'll start there. I just briefly, I think, there's a lot of variety. I can think about even in my own job right now as an attorney. Right now I'm busy reviewing I'm reviewing regulations for, consistency with other laws and policy objectives, and, preparing to brief these things up to senior leadership. Working on, developing a law clerk, mentoring a bunch of junior attorneys, working with other assistants at my level to talk about bigger projects that we're working on in the agency. We're talking about environmental justice work that we're doing. We're thinking about climate change. I'm doing presentations like this for you. Don't forget about teaching. We haven't mentioned that, but teaching and being in the academic world and doing that is an important contribution. I have some colleagues at a cool place called the Environmental Law Institute, ELI, which, if you haven't heard about them, they do a lot of really interesting work that it isn't really captured by those three categories necessarily, including environmental conflict resolution and environmental peace building. These are all really cool places for lawyers to end up. So there's a big range.
Thank you. Yeah, that's helpful.
Alexis, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't think so. I think you covered it. I mean, there are a lot of career paths. So I think it's really up to you, thinking about what you want to do next, understanding that your first job doesn't determine the rest of your career.
Go get one. That's the most important thing. Go get a job. you lazy bums. Go get a job. Lucy, you had a question?
Yeah, you can answer this really quickly, obviously, because I know we're ending our time here. But I just wanted to ask, how do you stay positive when you're interacting with an issue that can be daunting or frustrating, like environmentalism and conservation? Just because I'm an undergraduate at IU and I'm an intern for the CLC. And I know even for me, it can be frustrating, and you guys have dedicated years to this work. And so I just wanted to hear from you about how you stay positive and keep fighting.
Alexis, I'd like to hear from you on this. I worked for, a long time ago, I worked for Earthjustice. It seems like we all have that in our hip pocket. I worked for Earthjustice in New Orleans in Cancer Alley doing environmental justice work. And it was hard. It was challenging because it was a daily struggle of pain and suffering. But it's the most important work in the world, but it was difficult to stay positive about it.
Well, I don't know. I think those client connections make all the difference. I think it's seeing what people are going through when they live next to these polluting facilities and are dealing with health threats. That's certainly a greater concern than anything I'm dealing with at work. I mean, to me, my job is a privilege. I think I have wanted to do what I get to do now for a long time, and I'm able to apply some action towards problems that seem really intractable and like they're never going to change. So I find that really motivating. You don't have to take on the whole piece, the whole problem of, a racist system of pollution and environmental injustice across the country, but litigation gives you an opportunity to focus on one problem and conveying a clear story and, pushing for action and change. And to me, that's really rewarding. I think if you are,
great point.
You're not able to apply action to it, it becomes a lot more overwhelming and a lot more frustrating than it is when you have the real privilege to be the person who gets to write papers about this problem.
That's a great point. That's a really terrific point. I appreciate that. The other, the sort of side note to my own little personal story is that because I didn't find it sustainable for my own personal self, I asked to be reassigned to endangered species. And that just the sparks went off in my mind. And so as a few people have said, Alexis said a few minutes ago, and Denise said too, like your first job or your first assignment is not necessarily where you have to end up. You kind of got to chase your own path. So thank you for that, Alexis. That's great. Denise, what do you think?
Lucy, I really appreciate your question. And it's not lost on me that, you all have been growing up and now, moving to the next part of your career in an age where climate change is really terrifying, right? And it's kind of, the more you learn about it, the more you know about it, it's even more daunting, right? I would be lying to you if there were days where I haven't just been like, gosh, what are we at now? 420 parts per million CO2, and that's just not going to end well, right? So what are we doing with our careers? I think Alexis is right. For me, like being able to do work that is moving in things in a positive direction is helpful to me personally. It's also helpful to me to be surrounded by a bunch of really smart colleagues who understand that struggle and that pressure and be able to talk to them about it in a different way than you can talk to maybe like, your family at the dinner table. It's hard to know like how life goes or how things play out, right? I mean, what you're doing might seem insignificant, but it's really important that you do it. I don't know who said that, but it's a quote. I didn't say it. But I think it's true. There's a lot of us. It's going to take a lot of us with really, good skill sets, passion, and smarts to address some of these huge issues that we have created in the environmental sphere. And, but I think about the history of EPA. EPA just turned 51, December 2nd. And think about where we were 50 years ago, right when the EPA was getting started, right? And how much work has been done in just a short amount of time. Do you know there are attorneys in my office who were there when EPA started? That's fantastic. Like I hear their stories and like they have such this rich perspective on how much work, we've been able to do in 50 years to protect the environment, right? And so I think talking to people who have that perspective is very helpful to me as well when I start feeling kind of overwhelmed.
Well, I think we're about at time here. I want to say thank you to both Alexis and Denise for joining us tonight. And everybody, I know you're in the middle of finals, like I said, and it's a wonderful thing for you to make the time for it because stuff like this is going to matter. You got to have a fire in your belly to go get the job. So if we can be of service to you, if you have other questions, I'm sure that Denise and Alexis would be glad to share their contact information. I know I would be glad to do that. And if there's any way that we can help you kick around some of these ideas, or if you have other questions that come up after we end the conversation, just reach out to us, please. We want you to succeed. We want to help. So again, thank you to Alexis and Denise, and we appreciate your time. I hope everybody has a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thanks. Good luck, and do find me on LinkedIn and reach out. Take care.